coverage of the 2010 Renault Knysna Hillclimb is brought to you with the compliments of Renault South Africa. Drive the change. The garden route town of Knysna is perhaps best known for its picturesque setting, its superb scenery and its annual oyster festival. But the Knysna Hillclimb, held on a short and twisty 2-kilometre course up Simola Hill, is fast becoming another major drawcard. Now in its second year, the event attracted interest from far and wide and was again hosted by the Simola Golf and Country Estate. Hill climbs provide a simple but thrilling opportunity to pit man and machine against the clock. Anything goes, from road cars to racing machines. The inaugural 2009 Knysna event attracted 45 or so entries. The main interest centered around motorsport legend Sarel van der Merwe's close tussle with Pretoria racer Anton Krunier. Sarel was behind the wheel of a Mustang V8 modified race car. Kronier's weapon was a 380-kilowatt Subaru STI. Sarel won, but it was close. The success of the first event laid the foundations for a bigger and better 2010 hill climb.
We started last year in the weeds with hardly anything, no infrastructure and so on, but it proved to be such a success that we were fortunate to get Renault on board as a sponsor, and that allowed us to really lift the event up to a new level.
The newly created undercover pit complex was a huge improvement, but still wasn't big enough to cope with the more than 120 entries. Pre-qualifying runs reduced that number to 90 for Saturday and 45 for Sunday. A separate category for historic cars added a touch of nostalgia to the proceedings, while spectators arrived in their thousands to enjoy the action and the adrenaline-laced atmosphere. While the fast times were being set by modern machines like the very rapid Nissan GTRs, the classics like this Marcos were showing a decent turn of speed too. The MG Spider of Haynes Steed and the MG Fatman, driven by Stuart Grant, were among the classics entertaining the crowds. This yellow Porsche 911 GT3 was one of many sports cars to make an appearance at the event, as was Tom Barrett's E39 M5. From stock Chev Luminas to dedicated racing cars, the entry list was long and varied.
We ended up with a number of 120, and we eliminated them down to 90 for the final 2 days.
During the early elimination rounds, the turbocharged all-wheel drive cars, like this Lancer Evo of Wynand Vlok, seemed to be the ones to beat. And anything below 50 seconds for the 1.9-kilometre course was considered quick. Martin Hubert's supercharged Lotus Elise was another crowd pleaser. The noble M400 of Kwesi Swanepoel was another sub-50-second performer, while this wild Chevy Ute of Desmond Goodsight struggled with traction despite that wing. There were several Utes trying to conquer the Knysna Hill, but with rear-wheel drive only, making the most of that V8 power was always going to be a problem. Local Ute driver Charles Gregg kept things tidy. Another Knysna entry was the extremely wild Mercedes-Benz C63 AMG of Tuca Mechanicos. Alec Bates looked rapid in his GT40 replica in Chris Amon colours, while Clive Corder was setting times in the low 52-second bracket in his Lola T70 Mark IIIB. Alan Eustace ran his 1400 Formula V up the hill with gusto, stopping the clocks on 53 seconds exactly. Carl Uhlenberger's Porsche 911 got off the mark well and set a time of 51 seconds. Chris Murphy was enjoying the hill climb's twisty bits in his Renault Clio RS, while Ashley Lemmer posted a 57.2 second time in his Golf GTI. among the front-wheel drive contenders was RPM TV's own Dion Skuman, campaigning a new Renault Megane RS. His Saturday practice times were in the 53-second bracket. One of the crowd favourites was this historic E30 BMW 325 IS Group N racing car. The car's been completely restored and was entered for ex-BMW Motorsport ace Jeff Goddard and JSN BMW racer Robbie Smith.
I remember racing heavily with Tony in this car, 25 years ago, and it was door-to-door stuff then, and just to come and drive it has been a pleasure. And the nostalgia that goes with it and the interest from the crowd has been incredible.
Robbie took turns with Goddard behind the wheel of the Winfield BMW, and the two veterans were going at it, hammer and tongs.
This period car for me is very close to my heart. I was involved with the development of the cars, and to get back in one now again and revisit those old days is really, really terrific. I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
Enjoying it, Goddard certainly was, obviously relishing the opportunity of being reunited with the car restored under the auspices of longtime BMW privateer team manager Peter K. Eddy.
I had it in a barn for about 7 years. Then it was actually standing outside under the tarpaulin, and eventually Peter got involved and he said, come on, we can't let this car go and deteriorate anymore. Let's put it all back together. And over the course of about 3 years, they've done it. And it's, again, super.
Really, if you think about it, all that's changed is the rubber. And to come out here with a car that age and do the times that it's doing is amazing. And it's very well balanced. It really flies, and it's ultra reliable. It seems to rev well, very quick.
Robbie and I were very successful in these cars. We won 2 long-distance races together. And there are lots and lots of memories. And just to revisit all that, what a pleasure.
The Renault Knysna Hillclimb coincided with the South African launch of the new 184-kilowatt Megane RS. And to mark the occasion, Renault hosted a race within a race at the event. A contingent of motoring journalists were invited to participate in a media challenge, driving the new Renault Megane RS on the Hillclimb. All 36 media participated in an elimination round on Friday, during which each journalist was afforded 6 runs up the hill. The average of each writer's best 4 runs was used to select the 12 semi-finalists who returned to the Hillclimb on Saturday. With tension running high and cold and damp conditions making the going tricky, the 12 completed a further 2 runs each behind the wheel of identical Megane RS Cups, with the aggregate times used to determine the 6 finalists. They were Eddie Alberts of Extreme Car and Leisure, Marius Roberts of Ignition, Dennis Dropper of Star Motoring, Top Car's Angus Thompson, The Times' Thomas Falconer, and Motorbeelt's Egmont Sippel. The top 6 then completed another 2 runs each on the final day. Extreme Car and Leisure's Alberts took the honours, followed by Motorbeelt's Sippel and Ignition's Marius Roberts in 3rd. Saturday's qualifying run in cool and damp, but mostly dry conditions, saw the E36 BMW M3 of Leon Loepscher set a time of 52.27 seconds. Not bad for a 16-year-old car, albeit an obviously modified one. Possibly the rarest and most valuable car competing in the Hillclimb was the superb Porsche 956 sports prototype of France Pretorius. It posted a time of 50.15 seconds. At the start line, things were getting busy as the weather turned colder and more menacing. Rain was threatening and the times were getting slower. The Nixon Nissan 350Z of Jack Goodwin could only manage 58.67 seconds. This Escort Mark II was looking quite sprightly, considering its owner, Jacques Bauer, salvaged it from a scrapyard.
I've had it for about 10 years, built it up as a wreck of the scrapyard. Got a 2-litre Ford Sierra motor, modified that in with a drivetrain. And yeah, since then I've been up and down Skabanti, doing some gymkhanas, tracks, and obviously hill climbs.
The escort posted times in the 59-second bracket during practice, but sadly couldn't complete qualifying. While the main action was on the hill climb itself, there was a lot to do and see for spectators, including a classic car display and an expo area dubbed Gasoline Alley, where visitors could look at the latest Renault models, as well as buying official Renault merchandise. The Ford Focus of Fabian Roberts looked promising during Friday's practice sessions, posting times of around 54 seconds, but didn't manage to complete qualifying on Saturday. At the sharper end of the field, the big guns like the Ashley V8 Mustang were letting it all hang out as they started pushing for top times. But the weather had other ideas. We'll be back after the break with more action from the Knysna Renault Hillclimb, brought to you by Renault South Africa. Welcome to part 2 of the Renault Knysna Hillclimb, brought to you by Renault South Africa. After a night of almost non-stop rain, Sunday dawned grey, wet and miserable. Die-hard motorsport fans weren't put off, but for the competitors, the conditions would be challenging. Even the golfers stayed away. However, clerk of the course, Sparky Bright, had no intention of cancelling the event, despite the inclement weather, and the drivers got ready to take on a wet and slippery hill climb. One of last year's heroes, Anton Krunier, had to drive through the night to get to Knysna for final qualifying on Sunday. With no time for practice, it was do or die for the Subaru driver.
There's good competition this year, and Sarel was also good, but there's quite a few fast cars here, so yeah, that will be interesting today. That's why I made all the effort, you know. We raced yesterday at Midval. We left 4:30 yesterday and arrived here at 5 this morning.
Despite the wet conditions, Krunier looked very quick and very confident in the morning's first qualifying, setting the session's fastest time of 51.9 seconds. Rally ace Jeff Mortimer was only 13th fastest, a full 13 seconds slower than in the dry.
We've got Anton Krunier, who was very quick last year. He's come down. But the weather, I think, is going to play a big part. If the rain holds off and that track dries out, then it'll be, very closely contested, I think. It seems like there's at least 4 or 5 people who can, go for the King of the Mountain trophy.
Mortimer, in a 485 kilowatt Lancer Evo 9, was certainly one of the top contenders. But the weather wasn't letting up, and by late morning, the route was thoroughly soaked, playing right into the hands of the Nissan GTR posse. Willem Baart was the fastest of the GTR drivers, and it looked as if the tussle for top honours would be between him, Mortimer and Krunier. Greg Parton also made the most of the GTR's traction to post top 10 times. Lower down the field, the slippery route made life a misery for the likes of Alec Bates in the rear-wheel drive GT40, while Christopher Simons in the front-wheel drive Honda Civic also struggled to get the power down. But for Knysna, the rain brought welcome relief.
We can't complain about the rain too much. It's been the worst drought for 150 years, I think, in the area. So, rain is welcome, even if it comes at a bad time.
Despite the weather, the crowds arrived in their droves to watch the spectacle.
Yesterday alone, we had over 4,500 spectators, according to initial counts, plus competitors and all their support staff and so on, probably another 500 people there. Good few thousand people, which is obviously good for the town, and that's what this event's all about.
With conditions worsening, the crowds were holding thumbs that the organisers wouldn't cancel the day's proceedings. But in the pits, it was business as usual. Some even welcomed the rain.
Unfortunately, the class we're in, it's a big class with cars with much more power than us. But today, with the rain, it's going to slow them down a bit, and I think we can get closer to them.
Sadly, the team withdrew the historic BMW after the morning's final qualifying sessions, judging the conditions too dangerous. And given the amount of time, effort and money that went into the restoration, who could blame them? Also struggling in the rain was the priceless Porsche 956 of France Pretorius, who decided to soldier on despite the conditions. Local tyre dealer and racing veteran Nico van Rensburg bolted some wets onto his City Golf in his effort to conquer the rain. Meanwhile, Knysna was positive about his chances.
I think with the wet weather, the four-wheel drives will have a bit of an advantage. So yeah, let's see what happens today.
Knysna was second fastest in qualifying, setting up what looked like an intriguing contest in the final. Karl Ellenberger was pushing hard, keeping his Porsche 911 in the 56-second bracket. Simola Golf Estate Director Avril Kashula kept things clean in his Audi R8.
Next year we want to move it to May. Two major reasons for that. One is with the World Cup spin-off, it's expected that October next year the foreign tourists will already be coming in and we'll battle for accommodation. And then secondly, the weather. May is our lowest rainfall month and probably our best weather month. So it makes sense to move it to May.
With conditions worsening, the organisers decided to allow the 45 fastest cars to compete in a single do-or-die run up the hill, and only that run would count for the final result. Heiko Hidney was giving it stick in his Datsun 1800J SSS, posting a time of 1 minute 5.2 seconds for 39th spot. Cape Townian Craig Harper brought his Toyota-powered Harper sports car back to Knysna after a successful foray in 2009, but in the wet he struggled to break the 1 minute barrier. The Audi RS4 of Garth Porter looked handy in qualifying, but in the pouring rain he dropped down to a 58.5 second time, earning him 23rd place. Anton Rolino showed a lot of guts trying to control the wayward and wicked Chevy V8 in the rain. The little monster's best in the wet was a 1 minute 1 second and 29th overall. The Audi R8 remained a crowd puller, and Simola boss Avril Kashula knows the hill better than most. His final time of 56.9 seconds for 19th place proved how useful Quattro all-wheel drive can be. Quincy Sale in one of the Nixon 350Zs struggled to break the 1 minute barrier in qualifying, but splashed to a 58.8 second final run time, taking 25th spot. Pressing on in the Honda Civic was Simons on a 1 minute 3 second time for 36th place, while Johan Zulch could not repeat his sub 1 minute qualifying form and finished on a 1 minute 2 second final time for 33rd place. The E39 BMW M5 of Tom Barrett wasn't happy in the wet and had to be content with a time of 1 minute exactly, earning him 26th place. Another car that struggled in the rain was this wild Nissan Skyline in the hands of Henry Kapp. Without enough traction, a time of 1 minute 10 seconds was good enough for the 43rd spot. Alec Bates was still pressing on in the wet and managed a very useful 56.9 seconds in his final run to put the GT40 in 20th place. RPM TV's Dion Skuman made the most of the Renault Megane RS Cup's benign manners in the wet to post a rapid 56.19 seconds, the fastest front-wheel drive time for the day, and good enough for 14th overall. Shane Naidu's modified Audi S2 Quattro set a time of 56.4 seconds for 17th place, while the Porsche 911 of Willem de Beer had to be content with 21st and a time of 57.8 seconds. Henry Pinard looked and sounded spectacular in the big Mercedes CLS 63 AMG, but he couldn't break the 1 minute barrier and finished in 32nd place. Raising some eyebrows was Alan Eustace in his 1400cc Formula V single-seater. Despite the sopping wet surface, he set a final time of 56.09 seconds to take 13th place. Participants in the historic category ran their event within the Hillclimb. The MG Fatman of Stuart Grant retired before the final. The Marcos GT of Peter Gale was another quick qualifier that didn't make it to the final. This handsome replica of the Dart Roadster was driven by Andrew Sickler, but was withdrawn due to the wet weather on Sunday. The slowest but most interesting historic entry was the 1937 DKW F7 Meisterklasse of Gino Noli, which took 3 minutes and 29 seconds to puff its way to the top. The 1936 Riley TT Sprite of Roy Jones wasn't fazed by the weather either, and managed a time of 1 minute 41 seconds. The 1959 MGA Twin Cam of Chris Champion was in beautiful condition and had no trouble getting to the top of the hill in a time of 1 minute 39 seconds. This superb 1971 Ford Escort RS 1600 drew many admiring glances and sounded pretty good too on its way to 8th spot in a time of 1 minute 27 seconds. The MGB Roadster of Rodney Green didn't look that quick off the mark, but posted a useful 1 minute 16 seconds to take 5th place. The ever-cheerful Di Dugmore piloted her 1958 Austin